In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where alien civilizations have mastered technologies beyond human comprehension, where warriors from 1,000 worlds compete in academies that forge the universe's elite fighters, there exists a simple truth that every species has learned to respect. Never underestimate the quiet ones. The Galactic Combat Academy has seen champions from every corner of known space. Reptilian with their bone-crushing strength, crystalline who move like living light, telepathic who can predict their opponent's moves before they make them. For 300 years, these beings and dozens of other species have dominated the fighting circuits, their names echoing through the halls of the Academy like thunder. But in the shadows of their glory, unnoticed by the cheering crowds and dismissive instructors, walks a human girl whose very presence will soon rewrite everything the galaxy thinks it knows about warfare, determination, and the terrifying potential that lies dormant within the species they call the Soft Ones. Her name is about to become a legend. Her story is about to prove that sometimes the greatest storms begin with the smallest whisper. This is the tale of how humanity's quiet daughter became the galaxy's loudest nightmare. Maya had perfected the art of being invisible. In the towering spires of the Galactic Combat Academy, where beings from across the known universe gathered to prove their martial superiority, she moved like a ghost through corridors designed for creatures twice her size. The Academy's architects had built everything to accommodate the massive, whose 8-foot frames dominated most military installations, which meant Maya often found herself walking in shadows cast by doorways that loomed overhead like ancient monuments. She preferred it that way. Invisibility had become her survival strategy during her first year at the Academy, and now, halfway through her second year, she had refined it to an art form. While other students gathered in the massive dining halls, their voices creating a cacophony of alien languages and aggressive posturing, Maya found quiet corners where she could eat her rations in peace. While combat instructors focused their attention on the obvious powerhouses like Thane, the reptilian whose scales could deflect plasma blasts, or of the Empire, whose forearms moved faster than most beings could track, Maya absorbed every lesson from the back of training chambers, memorizing techniques that others dismissed as irrelevant to human physiology. The morning started like any other. Maya's quarters, barely larger than a storage closet and located in the section designated for minor species, echoed with the distant rumble of larger students moving through the main corridors. She performed her daily routine with mechanical precision. Physical conditioning exercises adapted for the Academy's heavy gravity, review of combat theory downloaded to her personal device, and mental preparation for another day of being overlooked, underestimated, and occasionally mocked by those who bothered to notice her at all. The Academy's structure reflected the galaxy's military hierarchy with brutal honesty. At the top were the apex species, the hegemony, the crystalline collective, the Empire, whose students occupied the premium levels with panoramic views of the Academy's artificial planet. Below them, the secondary species, dozens of civilizations that had proven themselves capable in specific combat roles, inhabited comfortable but unremarkable quarters. And at the bottom, scattered throughout the leftover spaces like afterthoughts, were the tertiary species. Humans fell somewhere between secondary and tertiary, their classification a subject of ongoing debate among Academy administrators who couldn't quite figure out where Earth's children belonged in the cosmic pecking order. Maya had stopped caring about classifications during her first week, when a group of students had cornered her in a training room and suggested she might be happier in one of the galaxy's agricultural academies. She hadn't responded to their taunts then, and she maintained that same silence now as she made her way through the Academy's labyrinthine corridors toward the primary combat chamber. Advanced combat theory was taught by Master Vex, whose telepathic abilities allowed him to simultaneously monitor the thoughts and reactions of every student in his class. His pale, elongated head turned toward Maya as she slipped into the chamber, his large, dark eyes registering her presence without acknowledgement. Maya had learned that Master Vex could read surface thoughts and emotions, but deeper mental processes required active engagement that most instructors didn't bother with when it came to human students. The chamber itself was a marvel of adaptive technology. The floor could shift between different textures and elevations, simulating everything from the crystalline caves of to the molten landscapes of. Environmental controls could adjust gravity, atmosphere, and even temporal flow within limited parameters. Today, the chamber was configured as a standard sparring arena, with observation platforms rising in tiers around the central fighting space. Today we examine the concept of species-specific combat advantages, Master Vex announced, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones characteristic of speech. Each species has evolved unique capabilities that translate into tactical advantages in combat scenarios. We will observe practical demonstrations. Maya settled into her usual position in the back row of the observation deck, her notebook ready. She had filled 17 such notebooks since arriving at the academy, each one containing detailed analyses of combat techniques, species-specific strengths and weaknesses, and theoretical adaptations that might allow a human fighter to compete against seemingly superior opponents. The first demonstration featured a student whose biomechanical implants augmented his already formidable natural strength. His opponent was Nexus 7, a synthetic being from the Machine Collective whose adaptive combat protocols allowed for real-time tactical adjustments. The bout was exactly what Maya expected, overwhelming force meeting adaptive precision in a display that reinforced every assumption about species hierarchy in combat. His massive frame moved with surprising speed, his implant-enhanced muscles driving attacks that would have crushed most organic opponents. Nexus 7 responded with calculated efficiency, its titanium composite frame absorbing impacts that would have shattered conventional armor while its combat algorithms analyzed and countered its patterns. The match ended when Nexus 7 exploited a momentary overextension in its offensive sequence, delivering a precisely calculated strike that disabled this primary motor cortex implant. Observe the fundamental principle, Master Vex continued as medical drones attended to both combatants. Superior technology and enhanced physiology create predictable tactical advantages. Combat efficiency correlates directly with species-specific capabilities. Maya wrote down the observation, then added her own notation in the margins. Advantage becomes weakness when opponent adapts beyond expected parameters. She had been developing this theory throughout her time at the academy, studying how overconfidence in species-specific advantages created exploitable blind spots. The second demonstration paired two members of the reptilian hegemony against a single crystalline warrior. The reptilians moved with the fluid coordination of beings who had evolved as pack hunters. Their scales shifted color to provide limited camouflage, and their natural armor allowed them to absorb significant damage while closing distance for devastating close-range attacks. Their opponent, a being known simply as Prism, fought with the patient precision of a creature whose crystalline physiology could channel and redirect energy attacks while providing natural protection against conventional weapons. The match became a study in attrition warfare. The reptilians attempted to overwhelm Prism through coordinated attacks, using their mobility and pack tactics to prevent the crystalline warrior from establishing a defensive position. Prism responded by treating the entire encounter as a complex physics problem, redirecting kinetic energy, storing and releasing absorbed impacts, and gradually wearing down his opponents through accumulated microdamages that their natural healing couldn't address quickly enough. Maya watched the subtle interplay of tactics with intense focus. She noted how the reptilians' pack coordination, their greatest strength, became a liability when Prism learned to predict their communication patterns. She observed how Prism's energy-based defenses created opportunities for specific types of attacks that neither reptilian attempted, because such techniques fell outside their species' traditional combat doctrine. Again, we see the validation of established combat hierarchies, Master Vex announced as Prism stood victorious over his exhausted opponents. Crystalline physiology provides superior defensive capabilities that overcome numerical disadvantages when properly utilized. Maya's pen moved rapidly across her notebook. Hierarchy assumes optimal utilization of advantages. Suboptimal tactics reduce effectiveness regardless of physiological superiority. Question: what happens when inferior species utilizes superior tactics? The chamber fell silent as Master Vex's attention fixed on Maya's position. His telepathic abilities had caught the edge of her thought, and his elongated head tilted with something that might have been curiosity. "Student," he said, his harmonic voice carrying easily across the chamber, "you have a question regarding today's demonstrations." Every head in the chamber turned toward Maya. She felt the weight of dozens of alien gazes, some curious, most dismissive, a few openly hostile. In the 2 years she had attended the academy, she could count on one hand the number of times an instructor had directly addressed her during a class session. Maya stood slowly, her notebook clutched in her hands. I was wondering about tactical adaptation versus physiological advantage, Master Vex. If a species with inferior natural capabilities developed superior tactical approaches, would that impact combat effectiveness? A rumble of what might have been laughter came from the section of the observation deck. One of them, a massive student named whose implants gleamed under the chamber's lighting, spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. The human wants to know if being weak can become a strength. Perhaps she should ask the Agricultural Academy. Master Vex raised one pale hand for silence. His dark eyes remained fixed on Maya, and she could feel the gentle pressure of his telepathic probe against the surface of her thoughts. An interesting theoretical question, student. Combat efficiency involves multiple variables. However, history suggests that physiological limitations cannot be overcome through tactical innovation alone. Maya felt something stir in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature controls. But Master Vex, wouldn't historical precedent be limited to conflicts between species with established contact? Has there been sufficient opportunity to test tactical innovation against predictable physiological advantages? The chamber had become completely silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to pause their gentle humming. Master Vex's probe deepened slightly, and Maya felt him encountering the edges of thoughts and theories she had spent months developing. You suggest that current combat doctrine may be incomplete due to limited historical data, Master Vex said slowly. This implies that established hierarchies might not account for unprecedented tactical approaches. I'm suggesting that maybe nobody's tried hard enough to find out, Maya said, her voice carrying more clearly than she had expected. Laughter boomed across the chamber. The soft human thinks she can discover something that 3 centuries of galactic warfare have missed. Perhaps we should test this theory. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice remained steady. Perhaps we should. Master Vex studied her for a long moment, his telepathic assessment reaching deeper into her mental processes than any instructor had ever attempted. Maya didn't resist the probe. She let him see her notebooks, her theories, her detailed analyses of every combat technique demonstrated in his classes over the past 2 years. Fascinating, Master Vex murmured, his harmonic voice carrying notes of genuine surprise. Student, you believe you have developed tactical approaches that might compensate for human physiological limitations. I believe I've developed approaches that haven't been tested because nobody thought they were worth testing, Maya replied. Stood from his position among the students, his 8-foot frame making the observation platform creak under his augmented weight. Master Vex, surely you're not considering allowing this human to waste class time with her fantasies. Master Vex's attention shifted too, and the student visibly flinched under this telepathic regard. Student, you object to practical testing of theoretical combat approaches. I object to pretending that humans can compete with superior species through wishful thinking and note-taking, said, his biomechanical implants humming as they responded to his rising aggression levels. Maya stepped forward, moving to the railing that separated the observation deck from the combat floor. Then let's stop pretending and find out. The chamber erupted in voices from dozens of different species, creating a cacophony that triggered the Academy's automatic sound dampening systems. Through the chaos, Maya heard Master Vex's harmonic tones cutting through the noise like a blade through fabric. Silence. The word carried telepathic reinforcement that brought immediate quiet to the chamber. Master Vex stood from his instructor's position, his pale form seeming to glow under the combat chamber's lighting. Student, you will demonstrate your respective positions through practical application. Standard Academy sparring protocols, non-lethal force parameters. Combat will continue until one participant yields or is incapacitated. Maya felt her legs trembling as she made her way down to the combat floor. The chamber's adaptive surface shifted beneath her feet, configuring itself for optimal combat conditions. Environmental controls adjusted gravity to standard Academy levels, slightly heavier than Earth normal but lighter than the... Across from her, descended from the observation deck like a walking fortress. His biomechanical implants had fully activated, glowing with the pale blue light of charged power cells. Muscle enhancement systems bulged beneath his already massive frame, and his cranial implants provided a direct neural interface with tactical analysis software that could process combat data faster than most organic brains could follow. Maya stood in the center of the combat circle, her academy training uniform feeling inadequate against the massive alien approaching her. She carried no weapons beyond what the academy provided for basic training: a neural disruptor for non-lethal takedowns, basic protective gear, and her own 2 hands. "Combat parameters established," Master Vex announced. "Begin when ready." Cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing through the chamber like breaking stone. "I will try not to hurt you too badly, little human. Perhaps this lesson will convince you to find a more suitable academy." Maya said nothing. She had spent 2 years learning to be invisible, absorbing every lesson, studying every technique, preparing for a moment she had never expected to arrive. Now, standing in the center of the Academy's primary combat chamber with every eye focused on her, she felt something she hadn't experienced since arriving at this place of giants and monsters and impossible beings. She felt ready. The silence stretched between them, heavy with anticipation and the weight of 3 centuries of established galactic hierarchy. Then moved, his enhanced frame launching forward with devastating speed, and Maya discovered that being invisible had taught her how to see everything others missed. The real test was about to begin. Maya watched his approach with the detached clarity that came from 2 years of careful observation. His biomechanical enhancements created predictable movement patterns, his enhanced muscles following optimization protocols that prioritized power over adaptability. She had seen this exact same charging attack in 17 different combat demonstrations, performed by 12 different students, each time resulting in overwhelming victory for the enhanced warrior. But Maya had also noticed something that apparently escaped everyone else's attention: the quarter-second delay between the implant's processing cycle and the muscle response. A gap so small that most combat analysis software couldn't register it, but large enough for someone who had spent months studying frame-by-frame recordings of combat techniques. Instead of retreating or attempting to block his charge, Maya stepped sideways and forward, moving into the space where his momentum would carry him past her position. Her hand found the neural disruptor at her belt, not to draw it as a weapon, but to use its power cell as a makeshift electromagnetic pulse generator. She had discovered this particular modification during late-night experiments in the Academy's engineering laboratories, where human students were allowed to practice basic equipment maintenance. His enhanced arm swept through the space where Maya had been standing, his implants calculating her new position and adjusting his attack trajectory. But Maya was no longer moving according to Academy combat doctrine. She dropped beneath his adjusted swing, her body flowing into a movement pattern she had derived from studying water dancing techniques developed by the aquatic species, modified with elements from the crystalline meditation forms that emphasized fluid transitions between different energy states. Her modified neural disruptor contacted its primary implant cluster for exactly 0.3 seconds, delivering an electromagnetic pulse that wouldn't harm the organic components, but would disrupt the biomechanical interfaces just long enough to create a cascade feedback loop in his enhancement systems. Stumbled as his muscle enhancement protocols suddenly found themselves trying to coordinate with delayed response times they hadn't been programmed to accommodate. His massive frame, designed for devastating straightforward attacks, became an unwieldy burden when his enhanced reflexes couldn't properly integrate with his natural nervous system. Maya flowed away from his position, her movement incorporating elements she had studied from 6 different species' combat traditions. The reptilian pack flow patterns that emphasized continuous motion, the harmonic positioning that worked with natural energy currents, the machine precision of collective tactical analysis combined with the adaptive improvisation that humans used to survive in environments they weren't designed for. "Impossible," she heard someone whisper from the observation deck. The whisper carried the harmonic undertones of speech, which meant Master Vex himself had spoken. Recovered from his momentary disorientation, his backup systems automatically compensating for the implant disruption. But the brief window had allowed Maya to establish position and momentum, and she pressed her advantage with techniques that no academy instructor had ever taught, because no academy instructor had ever considered their application. She moved like water around stone, redirecting devastating attacks rather than trying to stop them. When his enhanced fist drove toward her center mass, she guided it past her position using leverage principles adapted from gravitational physics rather than traditional martial arts. The Sohn power became her ally as she used his momentum to unbalance his massive frame. But Maya knew that tricks and cleverness would only carry her so far. His biomechanical enhancements gave him advantages that couldn't be negated through tactical innovation alone. His reaction time, even disrupted, remained faster than baseline human capability. His strength could break bones with casual contact. His endurance was supported by auxiliary power systems that wouldn't tire the way organic muscles did. Maya needed to end this quickly, before adapted to her unconventional approach, or before his systems compensated fully for her earlier electromagnetic attack. She had studied the Academy's sparring protocols extensively, looking for loopholes and exceptions that might give human students advantages in specific circumstances. One particular regulation had caught her attention. Combatants could claim victory by demonstrating unequivocal tactical superiority, even if their opponent remained conscious and mobile. The regulation existed primarily for matches between species with radically different physiologies, where conventional victory conditions might not apply. Maya shifted her approach, moving from reactive defense to active demonstration. Instead of simply avoiding attacks, she began predicting them, positioning herself to show that she could anticipate and counter his movements before he made them. She used the Academy's own recording systems as evidence, positioning herself so that the combat analysis algorithms could clearly document her successful prediction of tactical choices. When attempted a double-handed downward strike, Maya was already in motion toward his left flank before his enhanced muscles began the attack sequence. When he pivoted to follow her movement, she had anticipated the pivot and was flowing into a position that would leave him overextended and vulnerable. She didn't exploit the vulnerabilities she created. Instead, she demonstrated that she could create them consistently, repeatedly, with a precision that the Academy's sensors could measure and verify. "Combat pause," Master Vex announced, his harmonic voice cutting through the chamber's atmospheric systems. "Analysis required." Froze in mid-attack, his biomechanical systems responding to the official pause command. Maya stepped back to neutral position, her breathing elevated but controlled. Around them, the combat chamber's analysis systems hummed with activity as they processed the recorded data. Maya looked up at the observation deck, where dozens of alien faces stared down at her with expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. She had not won the match in any traditional sense, remained fully capable of continuing combat, and his enhanced capabilities still outmatched her own in every measurable category. But the combat analysis systems were already displaying their conclusions on the chamber's holographic displays. Prediction accuracy, 94.7%. Tactical adaptation, 97.2%. Combat efficiency relative to physiological capability, 312% above expected parameters. "Student," Master Vex said slowly, his telepathic probe reaching toward her thoughts with newfound respect. "You have achieved tactical superiority through methods not currently documented in Academy combat protocols." His biomechanical implants cycled through confusion algorithms as he processed what had just occurred. "Master Vex, I was not defeated. My combat capability remains at optimal levels." Student, defeat was not the objective of this exercise. Student was tasked with demonstrating whether tactical innovation could compensate for physiological limitations. The analysis indicates that she has succeeded in this demonstration. Maya felt something loosening in her chest, a tension she hadn't realized she had been carrying for 2 years. Around the observation deck, she could see students from dozens of different species reevaluating everything they thought they knew about human capability. But Maya also saw something else in their expressions, something that made her stomach tighten with new anxiety. She had wanted to prove that humans belonged in the Academy. Instead, she had proven something much more dangerous, that the established hierarchy of galactic combat doctrine might not be as absolute as everyone believed. "Master Vex," came a voice from the crystalline section of the observation deck. "If human tactical approaches can compensate for physiological limitations, What does this indicate about combat doctrine applied to other species with presumed inferior capabilities? The question hung in the chamber's recycled air like a challenge to everything the Academy represented. For 3 centuries, galactic civilization had organized itself around the principle that technological and physiological superiority translated directly into military dominance. Wars were won or lost based on which side could field the most advanced warriors with the most significant biological and technological advantages. Maya realized that her small demonstration had accidentally struck at the foundation of galactic power structures. She had wanted to prove that humans deserved respect. Instead, she had implied that perhaps dozens of other species had been underestimated as well. Master Vex descended to the combat floor, his pale form moving with the fluid grace characteristic of advanced. His dark eyes fixed on Maya, and she felt his telepathic probe extending deeper into her thoughts than any instructor had ever attempted. Student, your tactical innovations represent significant advancement beyond current academy doctrine. These techniques require detailed analysis and potential integration into advanced curriculum. Maya nodded, but she could feel the weight of dozens of alien gazes pressing down on her. The combat chamber had become completely silent except for the humming of environmental systems and the distant sound of other classes continuing in different sections of the academy. However, Master Vex continued, innovations of this magnitude require review by the academy's senior faculty. You will report to advanced analysis tomorrow for comprehensive evaluation. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature controls. Advanced analysis was where the academy sent students whose capabilities couldn't be easily categorized within existing frameworks. Some emerged from the process with advanced placement and accelerated graduation. Others were quietly transferred to different institutions better suited to their particular talents. Yes, Master Vex, Maya said. Today's class is concluded, Master Vex announced to the observation deck. All students will review the recorded combat analysis and prepare assessments of tactical innovations observed during today's demonstration. As students began filing out of the chamber, Maya became aware that she was no longer invisible. Every being who passed her position turned to stare, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to something that might have been fear. Approached her as she gathered her notebook, his massive frame still radiating the heat from his biomechanical systems. Human, he said, his voice carrying none of its earlier mockery. Your techniques, they should not be possible. They're not academy techniques, Maya replied. I had to figure them out myself. Yes, but how did you know they would work? Maya looked up at the student who had dismissed her as a weak pretender just minutes earlier. I've been watching everyone fight for 2 years. Really watching. You all do the same things over and over because they work so well against the kinds of opponents you expect to face. But none of you have ever faced an opponent who knew exactly what you were going to do before you did it. Cranial implants flickered as they processed this information. You studied our combat patterns to develop countermeasures. I studied everyone's combat patterns to develop countermeasures. Reptilian, crystalline, collective synthetics, all of them. I've been preparing for this possibility since my first week here. Preparing for what possibility? Maya shouldered her notebook and looked around the empty combat chamber. The possibility that someday I'd get tired of being invisible. As she walked toward the chamber's exit, Maya could hear his biomechanical systems humming with increased activity as his tactical analysis software attempted to process implications it hadn't been designed to handle. Tomorrow, she would face advanced analysis and the Academy's senior faculty. Tomorrow, her quiet rebellion against invisibility would either elevate her to recognition she had never sought, or destroy the carefully constructed life she had built in the shadows of giants. But today, for the first time since arriving at the Academy, Maya walked through corridors designed for creatures twice her size without trying to blend into the shadows. Today, she had proven something that would change everything, even if she wasn't sure yet whether that change would save her or destroy her. Behind her, the combat chamber's analysis systems continued processing the recorded data, their quantum processors struggling to categorize techniques that didn't fit within any known tactical framework. The algorithms reached the same conclusion that every organic observer had already grasped. Something unprecedented had just occurred, and the galaxy's understanding of combat capability would never be quite the same again. Maya had wanted to prove she belonged at the Academy. Instead, she had proven that perhaps the Academy and the galactic civilization it represented might not understand the true nature of belonging at all. The Advanced Analysis Complex occupied an entire level of the Academy's central spire, its corridors lined with chambers that could simulate any environment in the known galaxy. Maya arrived at the designated testing facility 30 minutes early, her notebook clutched against her chest like armor against the unknown. The waiting area was designed for beings much larger than humans, its chairs and tables scaled for or collective synthetics, leaving Maya feeling like a child in furniture built for adults. She was not alone in the waiting area. 3 other students sat in various states of nervous preparation, each representing species she had rarely interacted with during her 2 years at the Academy. There was a whose forearms moved in constant, anxious patterns as he reviewed holographic displays projected from his personal interface. A being that appeared to be from the ethereal consortium, its translucent form shifting between different opacity levels as its emotional state fluctuated. And in the far corner, something that Maya couldn't immediately identify but whose presence seemed to make the air itself feel heavier. "First time in advanced analysis?" he asked, his translator converting his clicking speech patterns into standard galactic. I have been," recalled for evaluation after an incident in advanced weaponry class. Maya introduced herself, and the ethereal being drifted closer with movements that reminded her of jellyfish swimming through deep ocean currents. "I am designated Song of Stars Between Worlds," it said, its voice carrying harmonic frequencies that made Maya's teeth ache. "I have been brought here because my thought patterns do not align with expected parameters for my species." The unidentified being in the corner remained silent, but Maya noticed that its presence seemed to dampen the electromagnetic fields generated by the facility's systems. Whatever species it belonged to, its biology interacted with technology in ways that made the Academy's sensors struggle to maintain consistent readings. "Maya," a voice announced through the chamber's communication system. "Report to Analysis Bay 7 for comprehensive evaluation." Maya stood, her legs feeling unsteady beneath her. The other students watched her departure with expressions that ranged from sympathy to curiosity. She had the uncomfortable feeling that she was about to become either a success story or a cautionary tale. Analysis Bay 7 was unlike any classroom or training facility Maya had encountered at the Academy. The chamber could apparently reconfigure itself at the molecular level, its walls, floor, and ceiling shifting between different materials and configurations as sophisticated scanning systems analyzed whatever occupied the space. The room currently resembled a standard interview chamber, with 2 chairs facing each other across a simple table, but Maya could see the complex machinery lurking behind seemingly solid walls. Admiral waited for her, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's lighting into complex patterns that danced across the adaptive surfaces. Maya had seen the Admiral during Academy ceremonies, but this was her first direct encounter with a being whose combat achievements were legendary throughout galactic civilization. Admiral had personally led the campaign that ended the Hegemony War, using strategies that were still studied in military academies across the galaxy. "Student," Admiral said, his crystalline voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the chamber's structure. "Your demonstration yesterday has raised significant questions regarding current Academy doctrine." Maya took the offered chair, which adjusted automatically to accommodate her human physiology. "Yes, sir, I understand my techniques were unconventional." "Unconventional." Admiral's form shifted slightly, light refracting through different crystalline planes. "Student, what you demonstrated yesterday challenges 3 centuries of established combat theory. Unconventional hardly seems adequate." The chamber's walls became transparent, revealing an observation area where several other figures waited in the shadows. Maya could make out the pale form of Master Vex, alongside beings she couldn't identify but whose presence suggested very senior Academy positions. "Tell me about your training prior to arrival at the Academy," Admiral continued. "Earth's military academies produce competent soldiers, but nothing in your records suggests preparation for the level of tactical innovation you displayed." Maya felt the weight of invisible scanning systems analyzing everything from her heartbeat to her brain activity as she spoke. I didn't have formal military training before coming here, Admiral. My preparation was personal study. Personal study of what specifically? Combat recordings from Academy archives, historical battle analyses from the Galactic Database, species physiology reports, technical specifications for biomechanical enhancement systems, anything I could access that might help me understand how to compete against beings with superior natural capabilities. Admiral's form pulsed with light patterns that Maya couldn't interpret. You studied our combat techniques in order to develop countermeasures. I studied everyone's combat techniques to understand the principles behind them. Then I tried to figure out how someone with baseline human capabilities might survive encounters with enhanced opponents. The chamber's scanning systems increased their intensity, and Maya felt a tingling sensation across her skin as various forms of analysis penetrated deeper than anything she had experienced before. Behind the transparent walls, she could see the observers leaning forward with increased attention. Student, your tactical innovations suggest a level of strategic thinking that exceeds what we typically observe in second-year students. More significantly, your approaches indicate fundamental insights into combat theory that our senior faculty had not previously identified. Maya wasn't sure if this was praise or accusation. I had a lot of time to think about it, Admiral. Being invisible gives you opportunities to observe things that others might miss. Invisible, Admiral's crystalline form seemed to focus more intently on Maya's position. Explain this term. Maya found herself describing her 2 years at the academy from a perspective she had never articulated before. She talked about moving through corridors designed for larger beings, about eating meals in corners where the dominant species didn't notice her presence, about absorbing lessons from the back of classrooms where instructors rarely looked. She explained how invisibility had become survival, and how survival had evolved into strategic advantage. You used your species' perceived insignificance as a reconnaissance asset, Admiral observed. You gathered intelligence on potential opponents while they remained unaware of your analytical capabilities. I guess you could put it that way, sir. Student, I am going to present you with a hypothetical tactical scenario. I want you to analyze the situation and propose solutions based on the approaches you have developed. The chamber around them dissolved, replaced by a three-dimensional holographic environment that Maya recognized as the system, site of one of the largest battles in recent galactic history. Hegemony forces, represented by blue markers, faced off against collective synthetic units shown in red. The tactical situation appeared hopeless for the, who were outnumbered 3-1 and trapped between the gravity wells of two gas giants. Historical battle, Admiral explained. The hegemony forces were commanded by General, considered one of the finest tactical minds of his generation. The collective units were coordinated by their most advanced combat algorithms. Conventional analysis suggested the hegemony forces faced certain destruction. Maya studied the holographic display, her mind automatically applying the analytical framework she had developed during her years of invisible observation. She could see the positions, the force distributions, the apparent tactical options available to both sides. What actually happened, Admiral? The hegemony forces achieved complete victory with minimal casualties. General is credited with tactical brilliance that overcame impossible odds. Maya continued her analysis, but something about the scenario felt incomplete. The positions, while apparently disadvantageous, actually provided certain opportunities that conventional tactical analysis might overlook. The collective's numerical superiority created coordination challenges that could be exploited by an opponent willing to sacrifice positional advantage for temporal dynamics. Admiral, what if the hegemony forces didn't overcome impossible odds? What if the odds were never actually what they appeared to be? The chamber's environmental systems hummed more loudly as the observers behind the transparent walls moved closer to the viewing interface. Explain your analysis, student. Maya gestured toward the holographic display, highlighting force positions and movement vectors. The collective units are positioned for maximum numerical advantage, but they're also positioned for maximum coordination dependency. If someone could disrupt their communication links at precisely the right moment, their numerical superiority becomes a coordination nightmare. She continued her analysis, pointing out how the gravity wells that seemed to trap the hegemony forces could actually be used to accelerate tactical repositioning if someone understood the physics involved. How this apparent disadvantage in firepower could become an advantage if they shifted from conventional engagement to harassment tactics designed to force the collective into reactive patterns. "Student," Admiral said quietly, "you have essentially recreated the tactical analysis that General required 6 months and a team of strategic advisors to develop." Maya felt her stomach dropping. "I'm sorry, Admiral. I didn't mean to suggest that I could match a general's strategic capabilities." "Student, General spent 6 months developing the strategy that saved the hegemony forces in the system. You just developed the same strategic framework in 6 minutes." The chamber around them shifted back to its interview configuration, but Maya could sense the increased attention from the observation area. Whatever she had just demonstrated had apparently exceeded someone's expectations by a significant margin. "Admiral, I didn't mean to imply anything disrespectful about General's achievements." "Student, you have not implied anything disrespectful. You have demonstrated that human tactical analysis capabilities may have been significantly underestimated by Academy evaluation protocols." Admiral's crystalline form pulsed with complex light patterns that the chamber's translation systems couldn't interpret. Behind the observation windows, Maya could see figures moving with what appeared to be urgent discussion. "Student, I am going to ask you a question that may seem unrelated to your academy performance. Have you given any thought to your career path after graduation?" Maya blinked at the abrupt change of subject. I assumed I would be assigned to a support role appropriate for human capabilities, Admiral. Technical analysis, perhaps, or liaison work between human colonies and galactic military forces." "Student, what if I told you that your capabilities might be more valuable in strategic rather than support roles?" Maya felt something cold settling in her stomach. "Admiral, I don't understand what you're asking." "I am asking whether you would be interested in accelerated advancement through academy programs that would prepare you for command-level responsibilities." The words hung in the chamber's recycled air like a challenge to everything Maya had believed about her place in galactic civilization. Command-level responsibilities were reserved for the apex species, beings whose natural capabilities and technological advantages made them suitable for directing military operations that might involve the survival of entire civilizations. "Admiral, humans aren't assigned to command-level positions in galactic military structures." "Student, perhaps it is time to reconsider what humans might be capable of achieving in galactic military structures." Behind the observation windows, Maya could see Master Vex approaching the communication interface. His harmonic voice filled the chamber through speakers she couldn't locate. "Student, your tactical innovations have been reviewed by senior academy faculty. The consensus is that your approaches represent a significant advancement in combat theory that requires immediate integration into advanced curriculum." Maya felt the room spinning around her. "Master Vex, I just tried to figure out how to survive long enough to graduate. I didn't mean to advance anything." "Student," Admiral's crystalline voice carried notes of what might have been amusement. "The most significant advances in military science often come from those who are simply trying to survive." The chamber's scanning systems powered down, and Maya realized that whatever analysis they had been conducting was now complete. Admiral stood from his position, his crystalline form reflecting the chamber's lighting in patterns that seemed somehow more complex than before. "Student, you will be transferred to the Academy's Strategic Development Program effective immediately. Your previous class assignments are suspended. You will work directly with senior faculty to develop and test tactical innovations for potential integration into galactic military doctrine." Maya felt as though the chamber's artificial gravity had suddenly stopped working. "Admiral, I don't think I'm qualified for strategic development. I'm just a second-year student." "Student, you are no longer just a second-year student. You are an asset whose capabilities require rapid development for the benefit of galactic civilization." As Maya left the analysis bay, she realized that her demonstration yesterday had accomplished something far beyond her original intentions. She had wanted to prove that humans belonged at the Academy. Instead, she had proven that maybe the Academy and the galactic civilization it served had been operating with incomplete understanding of what different species might contribute to the art of warfare. Walking through corridors that no longer seemed quite so overwhelming, Maya understood that she was no longer invisible. But she wasn't sure yet whether visibility would prove to be the achievement she had dreamed of, or the beginning of responsibilities she had never imagined and might not be prepared to handle. Behind her, in Analysis Bay 7, Admiral and the senior faculty continued their discussion of what Maya's capabilities might mean for the future of galactic military science. Their conversation would continue long into the station's artificial night, and the conclusions they reached would change everything Maya thought she knew about her place in the universe. Maya's new quarters in the strategic development section of the Academy were larger than any living space she had ever occupied. The suite included a personal workspace equipped with direct access to the galactic military database, holographic projection systems capable of simulating any battlefield environment in known space, and analysis software that had previously been restricted to senior command staff. Most significantly, the quarters were located on level 17, placing Maya among graduate students and junior instructors rather than the general population of academy students. The change in her circumstances had occurred with disorienting speed. Within hours of her evaluation with Admiral, Maya found herself relocated to an entirely different section of the academy, provided with advanced access credentials, and assigned to work directly with Professor, a strategist whose theoretical frameworks formed the foundation of modern galactic military doctrine. Professor's office occupied a space that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Architecture incorporated mathematical principles that human perception couldn't easily process, creating environments where angles didn't behave as Maya's brain expected them to. The professor himself appeared to phase in and out of visibility as he moved through spaces that folded back on themselves in ways that made Maya slightly dizzy. "Student," Professor said, his harmonic voice carrying overtones that seemed to resonate directly within Maya's skull. "Your tactical innovations have created what humans might term ripple effects throughout the Academy's strategic analysis programs." Maya settled into a chair that adjusted not only to her physical dimensions, but apparently to her psychological comfort levels as well, its surface becoming softer as her nervousness increased. "Professor, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by ripple effects." "Your demonstration against Student has prompted comprehensive review of tactical assumptions regarding species-specific combat capabilities. Senior faculty are currently re-examining 3 centuries of strategic doctrine to identify other potentially erroneous conclusions about the military potential of various galactic civilizations." Professor gestured toward a holographic display that materialized in the center of his office, showing what appeared to be a complex mathematical model with dozens of variables shifting in real time. "This represents the Academy's current understanding of relative military capabilities across all known species. Your techniques have introduced uncertainty into calculations that were previously considered definitively established." Maya studied the display, recognizing some of the species markers, but finding others completely unfamiliar. "Professor, are you saying that my demonstration has caused the Academy to question its understanding of military science?" "Student, I am saying that your demonstration has revealed that the Academy's understanding of military science may have been built on incomplete data. We are now confronting the possibility that numerous species have been systematically underestimated due to assumptions about the relationship between physiology and tactical capability." The holographic display shifted, highlighting specific regions where the mathematical model showed increased uncertainty. Maya could see markers for dozens of species she had never encountered, civilizations that apparently occupied positions in galactic society similar to humanity's placement somewhere between secondary and tertiary status. "Professor, what does this mean for my training here?" Professor's form stabilized into a configuration that Maya found easier to focus on, his features becoming more conventionally three-dimensional. "Student, your training objectives have been fundamentally redefined. You are no longer preparing for graduation into standard military service. You are being prepared for responsibilities that may require you to challenge and reconstruct basic assumptions about galactic military science." Maya felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same anxiety she had experienced before her advanced analysis evaluation. "Professor, I don't think I'm qualified for that level of responsibility." "Student, Qualification for unprecedented responsibilities cannot be determined through conventional metrics. Your tactical innovations suggest cognitive capabilities that may be uniquely valuable for addressing strategic challenges that conventional approaches have not successfully resolved. The holographic display changed again, this time showing what appeared to be actual battle scenarios rather than theoretical models. Maya recognized some of the engagements from her historical studies, but others were unfamiliar, their tactical configurations suggesting conflicts that had occurred beyond the scope of standard academy curriculum. These represent unresolved strategic challenges currently facing galactic civilization, Professor explained. Border conflicts with previously unknown civilizations, tactical problems posed by emerging technologies, strategic situations where conventional military doctrine has proven insufficient. Maya leaned forward, studying the holographic scenarios with the analytical focus that had become second nature during her years of invisible observation. Each situation presented unique challenges, but she could see patterns, connections between apparently unrelated tactical problems that suggested underlying strategic principles. Professor, some of these scenarios appear to involve non-standard warfare approaches, conflicts where traditional military advantages might not apply in predictable ways. Correct, student. These situations require strategic thinking that goes beyond established doctrine. They require the ability to identify tactical opportunities that conventional analysis has overlooked. Maya continued her examination of the holographic displays, her mind automatically applying the analytical frameworks she had developed to compensate for human physical limitations. But these scenarios involved considerations far beyond individual combat effectiveness. They required understanding of logistics, communications, coordination between multiple species with different capabilities and different strategic cultures. Professor, these situations would require strategic planning that accounts for variables I've never studied. Economic factors, political considerations, interspecies cultural dynamics that I don't understand. Student, you will have access to comprehensive educational resources to address these knowledge gaps. However, your primary value lies not in what you currently know, but in how you approach problems that others have been unable to solve. Professor gestured, and the holographic display focused on a specific scenario that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. The tactical situation showed human colony ships surrounded by hostile forces with overwhelming technological superiority, their escape routes blocked, their defensive capabilities clearly inadequate for the forces arrayed against them. This scenario is not theoretical, student. This represents a current situation facing human colonies in the Outer Rim territories. Conventional rescue operations have been deemed impossible due to the superior capabilities of the hostile forces involved. Maya stared at the display, her analytical mind automatically cataloging force positions, technological disparities, apparent tactical options available to the colony ships. The situation looked hopeless by every conventional metric, but something about the scenario reminded her of the historical battle Admiral had shown her during her evaluation. Professor, what if conventional rescue operations are approaching this situation with incorrect assumptions about what constitutes tactical advantage? Explain your analysis, student. Maya began highlighting aspects of the scenario that conventional strategic thinking might overlook. The hostile forces were positioned for maximum technological advantage, but their positioning also created coordination dependencies that could be exploited. The colony ships appeared defenseless, but their civilian infrastructure included systems that could be adapted for purposes their attackers wouldn't anticipate. Professor, what if the rescue mission doesn't try to match the enemy's technological advantages? What if it tries to force the enemy into tactical situations where technological superiority becomes a disadvantage? Professor's harmonic voice carried new overtones as he responded. Student, you are proposing strategic approaches that military commanders with decades of experience have not identified. I'm proposing approaches that military commanders with decades of experience might not consider because they contradict established doctrine about how military operations are supposed to work. The office around them shifted subtly, and Maya realized that their conversation was being recorded and analyzed by systems beyond her understanding. Professor's expression, as much as she could interpret facial patterns, seemed to combine approval with something that might have been concern. Student, your strategic frameworks suggest possibilities for military operations that could fundamentally alter galactic power dynamics. Such capabilities carry significant responsibilities and potential consequences. Maya felt the weight of implications she was only beginning to understand. Professor, are you saying that my tactical approaches could affect more than just military conflicts? Student, military capabilities shape the political and economic structures of galactic civilization. Strategic innovations that change how wars are fought inevitably change how societies interact with each other. The holographic display expanded to show multiple scenarios simultaneously, each representing different types of conflicts and strategic challenges. Maya could see the connections between them, the underlying patterns that suggested how unconventional tactical approaches might create cascading effects throughout galactic military science. Professor, I think I'm beginning to understand why Admiral asked about my career plans. Student, your capabilities may require career paths that do not currently exist within galactic military structures. We are in the process of developing new frameworks for strategic responsibilities that can accommodate the types of thinking you have demonstrated. Maya stood and moved closer to the holographic displays, her mind working through the implications of what Professor was describing. The scenarios she was studying weren't just academic exercises or historical analyses. They represented real situations where her unconventional approaches might save lives, protect colonies, or prevent conflicts that conventional military doctrine couldn't resolve. Professor, what would be expected of me if I accepted these new types of responsibilities? Student, you would be expected to develop strategic solutions for problems that have been considered unsolvable. You would work with senior command staff to design military operations that incorporate tactical innovations beyond current doctrine. You would help train other officers to think about warfare in ways that utilize capabilities that conventional analysis has overlooked. Maya felt something shifting inside her chest, a recognition that the invisible girl who had arrived at the academy 2 years ago no longer existed. That person had been replaced by someone whose thoughts and capabilities could affect the lives of millions of beings across the galaxy. Professor, what if I'm not ready for that level of responsibility? What if my approaches don't work when applied to real situations with real consequences? Professor's form shimmered slightly, and Maya realized he was consulting with systems beyond the office through telepathic interfaces she couldn't perceive. Student, readiness for unprecedented responsibilities cannot be determined in advance. However, the situations facing galactic civilization require solutions that conventional approaches have not provided. Your capabilities represent options that may not exist elsewhere. Maya looked around the office that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, at the holographic displays showing conflicts and challenges that span the galaxy, at the alien professor, whose strategic thinking helped maintain peace across hundreds of worlds. 6 months ago, she had been invisible, eating alone in corners, dreaming of simply earning enough respect to graduate without humiliation. Professor, if I accept these responsibilities, what happens to my original plan of just trying to survive long enough to graduate? Professor's harmonic voice carried what might have been amusement. Student, survival has never been just about individual achievement. Sometimes, survival requires accepting responsibilities for protecting others who cannot protect themselves. Maya nodded slowly, understanding that her decision would determine not just her own future, but potentially the futures of beings she would never meet in situations she couldn't yet imagine. The weight of that responsibility felt crushing, but it also felt like the natural continuation of everything she had been working toward since arriving at the academy. Professor, when do we begin? The holographic displays around them brightened, and Maya realized that her acceptance had activated systems that were already prepared for her response. Professor's office began shifting configuration, adapting itself for extended strategic planning sessions that would reshape both Maya's understanding of warfare and the galaxy's understanding of what humanity might contribute to the art of survival. Outside the office windows, the Academy continued its daily routine of training the galaxy's future military leaders. But inside Professor's multidimensional workspace, Maya was about to begin learning how to think about warfare in ways that no academy had ever taught. preparing for responsibilities that no human had ever held, and developing capabilities that would soon make her name echo through every military command center in galactic civilization. The Invisible Girl was about to become the most visible human in the galaxy, whether she was ready for it or not. 6 months after beginning her work in strategic development, Maya stood in the Academy's Central Command Center watching real-time displays of the most significant military operation in recent galactic history. Operation Silent Thunder, as it had been designated by Fleet Command, was the rescue mission for the human colonies in the Outer Rim that Professor had shown her during their first meeting. Maya's strategic framework had evolved from a theoretical exercise into the operational foundation for a fleet action involving ships from 12 different galactic civilizations. The command center occupied the Academy's highest level, its transparent walls providing a panoramic view of the artificial planet's surface and the space beyond where the Academy's training fleets conducted their exercises. Today, those transparent walls displayed holographic projections of the Outer Rim territories, where Admiral personally commanded the rescue operation using tactical approaches that Maya had spent months refining under Professor's guidance. Phase 1 implementation complete, announced Commander, an officer whose biomechanical enhancements had been modified with systems designed to interface directly with Maya's analytical frameworks. Hostile forces have responded to the diversionary attacks exactly as student predicted. Maya felt her stomach tightening as she watched the tactical display update with new position markers. The hostile forces, a previously unknown civilization that had emerged from unexplored space with technology superior to anything in the galactic database, had taken the bait. Their ships were repositioning to counter the apparent rescue attempt being conducted by conventional fleet forces, leaving their primary formation vulnerable to the real rescue operation that was approaching through routes the enemy couldn't monitor. Student, Admiral's voice reached her through quantum communication links that spanned the galaxy in real time. The enemy's tactical adaptation matches your analysis with 97.4% accuracy. They are responding to our diversionary formations exactly as you predicted they would. Maya moved to the primary analysis station, her hands flying across controls that had been redesigned to accommodate human physiology, while interfacing with systems originally built for species twice her size. Around her, senior Academy staff watched displays that showed the most complex military operation any of them had ever observed. The rescue mission involved not just fleet assets, but coordination with civilian ships, mining operations, and even commercial cargo vessels that had been adapted for roles their original designers never imagined. Admiral, Phase 2 can begin when you're ready, Maya responded, her voice carrying across communication channels that reached command ships scattered throughout multiple star systems. The enemy's repositioning has created the tactical opportunities we discussed. Initiating Phase 2, Admiral confirmed. Maya watched the displays as fleet units that had remained hidden behind asteroid fields and planetary shadows began moving toward positions that conventional military thinking would consider suicidal. Transport ships approached hostile vessels with superior firepower. Mining vessels moved to engage military units with overwhelming technological advantages, and civilian craft began operations that should have resulted in their immediate destruction. But Maya's strategic framework didn't rely on conventional approaches to warfare. Instead of trying to match the enemy's technological superiority, the rescue operation was forcing the hostile forces into tactical situations where their advantages became liabilities. Enemy formation is breaking cohesion, reported Commander, his biomechanical systems interfacing with sensor networks that span the operational area. They are attempting to engage multiple small targets simultaneously rather than maintaining their concentrated attack formation. Maya had spent months studying the behavioral patterns of superior technological civilizations, analyzing how they responded to threats that fell outside their standard tactical doctrines. Species with overwhelming military advantages typically relied on those advantages so completely that they became vulnerable to approaches that rather than challenged their superior capabilities. Admiral, the enemy command ship is exposed, Maya announced, highlighting tactical opportunities that were appearing on the displays in real time. They've moved to coordinate their dispersed forces, leaving their primary coordination node vulnerable to the approaches we discussed. Confirmed student, initiating Phase 3. The displays showed something that would have been impossible according to conventional military science. Human colony ships, protected by a mixed fleet of vessels from species that had never worked together before, were successfully evacuating civilian populations, while hostile forces with superior technology struggled to respond effectively to tactics they couldn't predict or counter. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched transport after transport escaping the hostile encirclement, carrying families and communities that would have been destroyed if conventional rescue operations had been attempted. Her theoretical frameworks had become the salvation of beings she would never meet, people whose survival depended on strategic thinking that challenged everything galactic civilization thought it knew about warfare. Student, Professor appeared beside her, his form shimmering with harmonic patterns that Maya had learned to recognize as approval. Your strategic innovations have achieved something unprecedented in galactic military history. You have coordinated successful operations involving species that have never been able to work together effectively. Maya wiped her eyes and focused on the displays where the final phases of the rescue operation were unfolding. Professor, I just figured out how to use what everyone already knew in ways they hadn't tried before. Student, what you have accomplished goes far beyond tactical innovation. You have demonstrated that galactic civilization possesses military capabilities that we did not realize existed. Around them, the command center buzzed with activity as Academy staff analyzed every aspect of the rescue operation for future integration into military doctrine. Maya could hear conversations in dozens of languages as beings from different species worked together to understand tactical approaches that none of their individual civilizations had ever developed. Final transport clear of hostile territory, Admiral's voice carried relief that translated across species barriers. Operation Silent Thunder is complete. All civilian populations successfully evacuated with 0 casualties to rescue forces. The command center erupted in sounds that might have been cheering if translated across the various species represented. Maya felt hands and tentacles and appendages she couldn't identify patting her shoulders and back, as beings who had watched the impossible become reality expressed their amazement in ways that transcended language barriers. Student, Admiral continued over the communication channels, Fleet Command has requested immediate briefings on your strategic frameworks for distribution to all military academies throughout galactic civilization. Your approaches are being designated as classified strategic innovations pending comprehensive analysis and integration. Maya felt something cold settling in her stomach despite the celebration around her. Admiral, are you saying that my tactical approaches are going to be studied by military forces throughout the galaxy? Student, I am saying that your tactical approaches are being recognized as the most significant advancement in military science since the development of faster-than-light combat coordination. Every military academy, every fleet command, every strategic planning center in galactic civilization will be studying your innovations. Professor's harmonic voice cut through the noise of the celebrating command center. Student, you should be aware that your name and tactical achievements are being broadcast through galactic communication networks. News services throughout known space are reporting the success of Operation Silent Thunder and identifying you as the strategic architect behind approaches that achieved the impossible. Maya felt the blood draining from her face. Professor, what do you mean by broadcast through galactic communication networks? Student, the rescue operation's success has attracted attention from every major news service, military analysis network, and governmental communication system in galactic civilization. Your name and achievements are currently being discussed on communication channels, reaching billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Maya sank into the nearest chair as the full implications of what Professor was describing began to penetrate her awareness. The invisible girl who had spent 2 years avoiding attention had become the most discussed being in galactic civilization overnight. Her strategic innovations were being analyzed by military experts on worlds she had never heard of. Her approaches to warfare were being studied by species she couldn't identify. Her name was echoing through the halls of power on planets scattered across the galaxy. Commander, Admiral's voice reached them through the communication links. Patch student into the primary fleet communication channel. Every ship in the rescue operation wants to express their appreciation directly. Maya found herself connected to communication channels that reached across the galaxy, her voice suddenly available to thousands of military personnel from dozens of different species. The next several hours became a blur of conversations with fleet commanders, transport captains, and civilian leaders who wanted to thank the human strategist whose innovations had saved their populations from destruction. But Maya also became aware of something else happening across the galactic communication networks. Intelligence analysts were studying her techniques, military strategists were working to understand her approaches, and governmental leaders were beginning to ask questions about what humanity's capabilities might mean for the existing balance of power in galactic civilization. "Student," Admiral said during a brief pause in the communications, "you should be prepared for the possibility that your achievements may result in significant changes to humanity's position in galactic society. Strategic capabilities of the magnitude you have demonstrated inevitably attract political attention." Maya felt the weight of implications she was only beginning to understand. "Admiral, are you saying that my tactical innovations might affect more than just military operations?" "Student, innovations that can coordinate successful operations between species that have never been able to work together effectively have implications that extend far beyond tactical applications. Your capabilities suggest possibilities for cooperation and coordination that could reshape how galactic civilization approaches everything from trade negotiations to diplomatic relations." Maya looked around the command center where beings from different species continued their celebration, their voices creating a harmony of languages and communication methods that represented unprecedented cooperation. 6 months ago, she had been invisible, unknown, irrelevant to anyone beyond her immediate instructors. Now, her name was being broadcast throughout the galaxy as the architect of strategic innovations that had achieved the impossible. "Professor," Maya said quietly, "what happens now?" Professor's harmonic voice carried notes of what might have been pride mixed with something that sounded like concern. "Student, now you face the consequences of success beyond anything you originally imagined. Your achievements have made you visible to forces and powers throughout galactic civilization. Some will seek to utilize your capabilities for purposes you may not have anticipated. Others may view your innovations as threats to existing power structures." Maya nodded slowly, understanding that her journey from invisible student to galactic strategic asset had reached a turning point that would determine not just her own future, but potentially the future of humanity's role in galactic civilization. Outside the command center's transparent walls, the Academy continued its mission of training military leaders from across the galaxy. But inside the center itself, Maya sat surrounded by displays showing the successful conclusion of Operation Silent Thunder, knowing that her name would now echo through every military command center, every governmental communication network, and every strategic planning facility in galactic civilization. The girl who had perfected the art of being invisible had become the most visible human in the galaxy. Her fighting name had suddenly dominated every broadcast, and she was about to discover whether that visibility would prove to be humanity's greatest opportunity or its most dangerous challenge. The real test was just beginning, and this time the entire galaxy was watching.